So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Julie Yak, and I've got a handful of slides to introduce our speaker and our topic today. You're not here to listen to my announcements, I'm sure. As you just saw, we are recording today. We record those meetings because as a virtual group, we have members around the world, and we try very hard to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to get the learning that we have to offer. So if you are not interested in participating in the recording, go ahead and exit now and review that later on. Everyone is free to interact with our speaker. If you want to bring up items in the chat, by all means, talk about them in the chat. If you want to come off of mute and interact directly with Marius, help yourself. We'd love to have you do that. And if you are shy, then pull me up in a private chat and ask me the questions, and I'll go ahead and be the intermediary for you and get that question in front of our speaker. We're always looking for speakers. Anyone who joined early heard me speaking with Kurt about potentially speaking with our group. So if there's a topic that you are interested in presenting, let me know and we'll work on getting that taken care of. If there's a topic you're interested in hearing about, also let me know, and we've got a pretty good network of folks that can come in and deliver the presentations. We can find an expert in whatever topic it is that you're looking for. Coming up, we have Colin speaking with us about embedding Canvas apps into our model-driven apps. And then shortly after that, we'll be planning our, I guess it's our anniversary or our birthday, I'm not sure which one it is, but in March, we will have been XRM Virtual for 10 years. So I've spoken with Shan MacArthur, and he's going to join us for a meeting. We're still trying to figure out our exact agenda for that, but we figure it's time for a special, maybe a reunion, maybe some kind of special guests that you may like to have on our next meeting. Just let me know if you have any ideas of how we can celebrate 10 years of being here providing great content. So, Marius, are you ready?
Shortly.
Okay, so take a minute and introduce yourself.
I'm just going to switch rooms because my daughter has to go to bed right now. So
Okay.
that's good. Good
You have a
planning.
baby, I have a puppy. They're always making noise, aren't they? But I can put my puppy in a cage. You can't put your baby in a cage.
No, not even if I had one.
Yes.
No. Okay. So my name is Marius Agerlind. I am a business applications MVP who only knows customer engagement, basically. I've been in MVP since November 2017, and I run the local user group or meetup group in Norway, Oslo. I've had one presentation before on, I think, authentication with the dynamics and integration strategies. And today I'm going to talk a bit about backup and restore, which isn't really a big topic for online services. So let's see. I'll try the one with pictures first. And then just let me know if it's too slow, and then we'll switch to the other one. I've uploaded both of them.
Okay, so if you've been able to load it, it should be just fine, regardless of the size of the PowerPoint.
Should be, but
I'm not seeing it yet. Let me see if I can switch for you. Can anyone chime in on chat or unmute and let me know what it is you see?
I just see the spinning loading screen.
Okay, that's what I have.
yeah, I switched to the other one. But it still doesn't show anything.
How good are you at tap dancing, Marius?
Online without video, amazing. Yeah, that's weird because the new one should be small.
Right.
Yeah, it says it's okay. It says now showing, but it's showing your presentation.
So we'll just give it a moment here. I can also, I'm going to remove the larger PowerPoint deck just to see if that's slowing things down.
Just switching back and forth.
So while we're waiting, what is
So
the group?
is it showing your presentation now?
I see mine.
Yeah. Why though?
So what is the consensus of the group of moving this conversation to Teams? Or should we leave it on Skype for Business for now?
Teams.
Okay, who is that? I didn't see your microphone light up.
Sorry, Tom.
No worries. I'm okay with Teams.
Yeah, let's give Teams a try.
I've been trying to embrace Teams.
Okay, so I'll just send you the presentation and you can try to upload it.
Okay, that works.
Yeah, it's 1.2 megabytes, so it shouldn't be this low.
No, that shouldn't be an issue. So it says I have it. Give me just a minute to confirm and to upload it.
And for the record, I'm all for Teams. I generally feel that these kinds of issues don't happen as much there.
Oh, you get different issues.
Well, there are always issues.
Yes.
Unless you find the old version of Skype. Did you get it?
I did. Just a moment here. Here we go. It's saved. How's that?
I see a PowerPoint.
Yep.
And it's not my PowerPoint.
No, it's mine.
Awesome.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you everyone for your patience and for the random conversation. And with that, I'm going to go on mute and I'll be here if you guys need anything.
Great. So I'll try not to be nervous because that sounds just even more awful with my English accent. So without further ado, this is my presentation on disaster recovery strategies for Dynamics 365 Online, which, as I said earlier, isn't really a very big topic for online services, but it doesn't mean that it's not important. So it says here I'm privately viewing it. Did it take over as presenter? Yeah, that's clever. Yeah, so you see
I see
the
that you
slide
changed the
2
slides.
now. Yeah. So a disaster recovery plan is basically a backup and recovery plan. And it's all about the recovery scenarios your business needs. You need to figure out what data collections you need and how they fit into those scenarios, and how do you take backup of those data collections? How should you restore them? What kind of data retention do you need? Do you need transaction history, like what happened at that point, etc. And one of the most important things about disaster recovery, which I think is pretty well known by now, but was a big thing some years ago, is how and when do you recover the data? Because if you have backups and you have them stored safely away, if you don't have a way to restore them, then the amount of time it takes before you're back online is going to cost you a lot. So it's the best thing is probably to start by thinking of how am I going to restore it in the event of something failing. So it's in the cloud. Do we ever need a recovery strategy? Well, for Dynamics 365 customer engagement, the system backups, the automatic nightly backups, have a 3-day retention period. That means after 3 days, you can not get any data which is older than 3 days. You also have a manual button, but these backups also have 3 days of retention. There's a backup to Azure function, which is marked as internal, do not use. It worked for a very short while, and then they removed support for that one. So I'm not sure if they're ever going to turn it on, because if you have an Azure backup, then that means if you're going to restore it, then Microsoft would have to support the version of that backup you're trying to import. And that's one of the biggest issues with this, that if they turn it on, then people just back up their 8.0, 8.1, and 8.2 solutions and try to restore them after the upgrade deadline has passed. Failover, like automatic failover, because all Dynamics instances come with a failover instance. They do not remediate old mistakes, like people deleting a field, which just deletes all of the data. It doesn't help if somebody accidentally changed contact information and nothing triggered because it was a mistake. It was looked benign, but it wasn't. Of course, auditing could help with that, but auditing is not a great way to see changes far back in time. And of course, you get some restore capabilities from the Microsoft Cloud Services, and the team will certainly help you if anything goes wrong, but it will take time. It's support tickets, and of course, it's a severity A if nothing is working, but still, it could take quite a lot of time before you're back up and running. So for business, Dynamics 365 is quite business critical, so you might consider having a disaster recovery plan, just not to be stuck waiting for the support request to be resolved. So for the different backup types, you have a manual backup, which is where you go into the old admin portal and you just go to backups and perform a new backup. So it's easy. You just need to be a service administrator or tenant administrator. The backups can be restored into sandboxes. The backups are, as I said, they only live for 3 days. So after 3 days, they are automatically deleted, but they do not take up any storage quota. So the limited amount of storage won't be affected by the manual backups. Another downside is that it's all or nothing. So if you only need to back up your account and opportunity data, then you can't just say, I only want those things. You're going to get everything, which means in a restore scenario, you now have an entire copy of your Dynamics 365 database. So getting those back into your system means that you got to do some staging work or something. So if it's selected records, then an all or nothing backup will take a long time just to pick out the pieces you need. Copy to Sandbox is probably the easiest part. You just go into the same old admin center, you select one of your instances, and then you just copy it and select one sandbox to copy it to. You can even check the box to mark it as being in admin mode when it's finished. So it's easy, it takes the complete solution, and it's ready to go at any time. The issue with this is it's space. It costs a lot of space, especially if you have a large production database. Then it's going to take up an equal amount of space. It's very impractical for multiple restore points. So if you need to have backups from different parts, different time points, or if you need transactional backup, which makes it really impossible, then it's really impractical to have a sandbox with a label of the date you took the backup, etc. It probably requires application lifecycle management to set up some automatic backup and deletion and so on of what's in there. So it's easy to perform, but to maintain is probably going to cost you a bit of maintenance. And the same as a backup, it's an all or nothing solution. You're making a copy of everything you have, or you could do a minimal copy, but then you would lose everything you have. So don't do that. Then you have staging tools. This is typically like SSIS or Kingsway Software Scribe or one of the many other solutions. So these are relatively cheap, depending on what you define as expensive, but I think most companies could afford to run Kingsway Soft. It gives you granular control, so you can choose what you want to take and where to put it. You are, however, depending on third parties. So even though I think Daniel Kai is an awesome person, you are depending on his company being there for you, which they historically have been. So not blaming anyone for anything. It's just you're introducing another party into your disaster recovery plan. Also, staging tools are still staging tools. So they're actually meant for either pushing data or transforming and updating data. It's not really a continuous integration kind of tool, and it's not really meant for backups. It's kind of awkward for backups actually, because you have to set up which times or set up a trigger to actually perform the backup, and doing stuff like granularity or finding changed records, etc., is going to be a lot of, it's going to take a lot of time to script all of that and set it up for automation. Third-party offers. So there are a few third-party offers out there, which might be good. I don't have any experience with any of them. I see that they're usually some kind of, yeah, they look kind of like Scribe usually, only that they're labeled as backup. So you just back up whatever you need into a cloud solution, and they give you some restore capabilities as well. And that's usually the biggest issue they have as well. That's the reoccurrence issue. Like, how often do you want to take it? Do you need transactional info, etc.? So it might suit your needs perfectly if you don't require much from your backup solution. But as I just said, I can't recommend any of them because I haven't tried any of them, so I don't know how good they are. So just a second, I'm looking what Kurt said here. Yeah. Yeah, that's true, Kurt. Secondary replicas in terms of disaster recovery, all organizations in Dynamics have a secondary replica. So if you enter, you can actually just try it now if you want to. If you enter your organization name, /s.api.crm, wherever you are, crm4 for me, .dynamics.com, then you will navigate to the secondary replica of your Dynamics instance. For most of you, or probably all of you, you will be online, or both of the instances are online. So what will happen is that you will be redirected to your org-d.api.crm.dynamics.com. That's basically your normal production instance. However, for all integration scenarios, you should probably be aware of that if the primary node goes down, if you don't want data loss, then you should have some failover which targets this secondary node so to make sure that the data is continuously updated. As I've written here, but the browser is automatically redirected, so you don't really see any difference from a user perspective. But for an integration perspective, using the SDK, using the web services, it's important to make sure that you're not losing your data. Also, secondary replicas doesn't help with intentional data loss, as I stated, which is when somebody made a change which made you lose some data in some way, removing a managed solution, deleting unmanaged field, etc. It's kind of intentional, so there's no secondary replica which says, oh, maybe you didn't want to do that. It's going to be, if you do that in your primary, it's going to be deleted in the secondary as well. So enter the data export service. The data export service is a solution available through the admin interface. Just go to solutions and you can install it for your instances. It's the integration is free. You just activate it, but you do need to have an Azure SQL database to store the data in. It's not actually meant for backups, but it is awesome for backups because it pushes data in. It's not near real time, but it's as fast as the async service can work. It will push the data changes to the Azure SQL database as specified. It's most often used for reporting, I believe. And one of the big issues with reporting is that it doesn't respect the security model. So it doesn't respect teams and all of the security roles, etc. It's just flat data in a database. So I love the data export service, and I figured out that, hey, it's an Azure SQL database. Can't we do more with this? So this was going to be a fun picture, but it isn't anymore, which is Run Sookup, generally thought of as the father of SQL Server. So just disregard the whole first sentence and everything. There's something called Temporal Tables, which is available from, I think, SQL Server 2016, also in 17, and of course in Azure SQL Database. So a temporal table is basically a history table where there's a datetime2 reference for the start and end time. So what happens is that every time you have an addition, you append or change or delete something in the record, it is copied off to the history table. And the record in the history table will have a start date and an end date. And so there will never be two records with the same ID who has a start or end date that collides with each other. So you can add those temporal tables per table in a database and use a for statement to query all of this to see what you have inside. So the only thing about this, it requires an S3 level of Azure SQL database or a premium database. So it has a cost, but again, it's not that big. So that is super cool, right? So with my awesome English accent and kind of nervous presentation skills, it doesn't really sound that cool, but temporal tables are actually awesome. But they are not like installing Office or some other application which just click next, finished, and approve that they collect your data indefinitely. You have to make sure that you learn what they are, how to maintain them, and how to use them properly. So make sure that your administrators or you yourself, if you are the administrator, learn what they are and how they work. And make sure that the guys who are using this know how the for statements work, because it's a different way of querying data. But again, the temporal tables are really, really cool, and you can use them for so many other things than just backup strategies. I'll talk shortly about that a bit later. So, next thing is, how do you want to manage backups over time? So the data export service with temporal tables will give you a great history of what has changed, and you can select which tables you want to change. So you have quite a bit of granularity, and it's updated really fast. So if something should die immediately, then the current record plus the history table will have a lot of data you can rebuild your system with. What are your requirements for restoration? So how do you want to restore that data? How do you get back up and running again? Are your integrations, do they support a new URL? How about your users? Are your users able to just go to a new instance.crm.dynamics.com and instantly figure out that, hey, it's the same as the old one. We just need to use this one while the old one has failed. And what are your requirements for deletion and anonymization? So that's a big thing about backups and GDPR, is that you need to make sure that anonymized data is actually anonymized and that you're not storing stuff too long, etc. So how do you maintain those backups? And final question, like, can you really use this for anything else? And yes, you really, really can. Any analyst would love to get a hold of relational data with a history table, which is all, well, hopefully if your salespeople are doing their job correctly, it's all of the interactions you have. Yeah, like Kurt says, the temporal tables are basically like audit logs on steroids. So I'm going to show you how awesome they are in a demo in just a little while. And when I did this, I got properly excited. I even drank an additional cup of coffee. So last part of the slide is how to get your data back in. So do you need selected records? Is that one of your scenarios? Like you might lose the contact data of one of your accounts, or do you need complete record sets, like everything that changed between these 2 points in time? Typically, if you did some import that managed to overwrite some of your important data, do you want to overwrite what's already in a system, or do you just want to append things that are missing? Do you want to like create a whole new environment, like create a new organization and start from scratch to build up something new, etc. So, and how do you want to do those things? Do you want to use third-party solutions like we talked about a short while ago? Or do you want to use the import data, which can be both a wizard or the old import zip files? Or do you want to create your own import project using C# or something? So those are basically the things to consider when you're designing the how to get back online things. Actually, I missed one part, and that's the part about integration, like I talked about in a short while ago. Make sure that any web integration, flow, etc., that you have, that you are able to change those connections if need be to target the new environment, if there's a new one. So that's me trying to race through my presentation. So to the fun part, I'm going to show you a bit about how this works. So let's see if I can share my desktop. So anyone just let me know as soon as you can see Infinity.
There we go. We can see it.
Yep. Great. So this is recently reset environment. The only thing I've done here is added the data export service. Just show you quickly. Going to the old management studio. You see here from applications, I think, no, data export service is a solution. So from instances, you pick your instance. And if you don't see this button over here, it will probably show up if you click that row again. I'm not sure how long that bug has been there, but it's been there for quite a while. So if I change here, now they're showing on all of them. But if I click this one, it doesn't show before I click another time. So now you know. Anyway, so edit solutions. And then you find the data export service for Dynamics 365 down here. I already installed it, but it will say not installed, and you can just click an install button and approve that you're sharing some data with Microsoft. But data export service basically is Azure Service Bus combined with Azure Data Factory. So there's an update trigger that says that there's new data, and then the Azure Data Factory just pushes it over. So after the data export service has been installed, you'll get this new option under settings as data export. And this is just an external website, actually. So this is just iframed inside here. Let's see if you... No question. So this is actually just a framed web page. So it's a web resource. And this actually lives somewhere else. I'll see if I can pause this for a bit later, and I'll show you the Swagger file if anyone is interested. So what you do here is that you create profiles where you sync up data. So what you do is you click the new button, and you want a name, you want a key vault URL, a schema, prefix, retree count, interval, and if you want to write a deletion log. So key vault URL probably trips some people up because, okay, there are no guides here, but luckily you have this script. So what this does is it's a PowerShell script where you fill in your subscription ID, key vault name, secret name, etc. You might not know what all of these are, but they're easy to Google, so or Bing probably, but yeah, easy to Google. And then you just fill in those variables and you run the script. Then you're presented with a login to log into Azure, and it will set up a key vault and store the connection string to your Azure SQL database. So once that's done, you get to configure your entities and relationships, so you can add relationships as well. So you can see here the name of it. I wonder if you can, yeah, manage entities. So here you see the entities, and I've selected account, contact, lead, and probably opportunity. Yeah, so that's how A4 I am, just straight out of the box. Yep, so those are the entities, and then you can also select relationships, so relationship between these entities. So here I've selected a relationship between contact and lead, and account and lead. And here it says how many, when it was last synchronized, how many notifications, etc. So there's some information in here. See here as well. So as soon as this is set up, it will start to synchronize frequently. So over here in Azure, we have my Azure SQL database. So you. There we go. So as you can see here, I have the account leads, attribute metadata, contact leads, deletion log, global option set metadata, lead opportunity, option set metadata, state metadata, status, target metadata, and here is a temporal history table. So for all the records that you, all the entities you pull out, there will be corresponding option set metadata and global option set metadata. So the even though you exported zeros and ones and twos and whatever numeric prefix you have in your solutions, you will have a corresponding table to look up the actual string value. So I forgot to bring my, to see if I can get this without showing you everything I have on my computer. Some of them. So here are some SQL scripts. So what you do is that you need to enable these temporal tables, you will have to set versioning on first. So these are in the wrong order. So work. To be able to have system versioning, you need to have a system time as well. So the first part here basically alters one of the tables created by the data export service. So you're kind of in a gray area here because you're actually reconfiguring a database created by a out-of-the-box solution. But on the other hand, you're the one who owns this database. So if you think that's awful, then you can just set up replications. You can replicate this data into another database. That might actually suit you a lot better as well, because now we're running this in a S3 instance, which costs a lot more than an S0 or S1. So it all depends on what your business needs are, and money is always an issue. So what this does is that it adds a new column to the account table, which is named start time. It is set to hidden, and it's and then we add a row start and row end, and it automatically generates these dates. So the next part is altering the table to set history to on. Set here. You will probably want to configure this a bit more, because you can pre-create the history table and add a lot of constraints and everything to it. For development purposes, this is just good enough, but usually you would like to add some more things to it. So yeah, I'm not going to teach you T-SQL today. That's the wrong topic. So to demonstrate, if I go here into accounts, I look at my active accounts, I look at all accounts, there is nothing in here. But earlier, I did create an account. You see, no rows here. But earlier, I did delete an account, and then I updated it, and then I deleted it. So if you go, if I create a new select from account for system time between 0101 and 2019 0202.
So, Marius, I don't know about the others, but I cannot hear you speaking anymore. You come and go.
Oh, is it better now? Or
Yes, it is much better now.
okay, great. So, yeah. So with this statement, I'm selecting all of the records that have been entered. So this for statement is the magic part, which also queries the temporal table. So I'm selecting all records that have a system time between the 1st of January and 2nd of February this year. Then you can see that I get 2 records here. So even though I selected everything from my table in the sentence over, I didn't get anything there, but now that I include the for statement, I get everything from the temporal table. This means that I could also do, as you can see here, system time between that and 13:55, which happens to be this date. So if I filter based on system time, you will see that I only get one of the records back. Also, if you run this, you see that, well, you can't see, you'll just have to trust me on this one, that these IDs are the same because it's the record ID. And here the state code and the status code for that record. So you see this was the initial create, and this was when I disabled the record. And then I had a deletion as well. And you can see that from the data export service table. Select from the delete log. You will see that there's one record which has been deleted. So that's kind of awesome. It's, oh, I had another. Oh. So as you can see, you have a lot of cool data to play around with. And I think I'll just create another account. We'll look at it in just a minute or two because the sync usually goes really slow when I'm presenting. It's like it knows I'm nervous. This presenter is nervous. There we go. Created a new account. And then we'll look at it inside the editor in a bit. So usually it takes like a minute or so, but I'm betting it's going to take a lot longer today. Yeah. So that's temporal tables and using the data export service. Now for the really, what I feel is the most exciting part is using Power Apps to load up your data again. So what you can do within Power Apps is to go to web.powerapps.com. You select the environment you're working on, and then you go to Data and Entities. Inside this view, there's a button called Get Data. This is this is an import function which will import data, but it will overwrite what's already in your table, and it will only import once. So it's not a continuous integration project. Yeah. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to connect to Azure SQL database. So I'm going to connect to, just going to cheat here. Oh. Really going to copy it this time. So copy the server name. And now I'm connected to that same Azure SQL database. So if I click here, see, so it looks like it's come through. So let's let's take a quick look at that. Yeah, so now the new record has come through. So look at this, and you can see that there's already one account here. Or I can go into this one. So this is how the temporal table will look if you don't specify a name or anything. It will just give you a system-generated name. So what I can do here instead is that I can go here. And here I have two accounts. As you can see, they have the same ID. You can see all of it here in this view. But there are two accounts here. There's one there. To the next screen. So what I can do here is that I can say that I want the ones that have been modified on, I only want to choose this one, or I can do advanced filters like we all know and love. And additionally, I could say that I want to reduce the number of rows, keep top rows, keep bottom rows, etc. Transfer, so you have a lot of things here. So this is just basically Power Query. For those of you who played around with Power BI, you already know this stuff. So what I want to do is I want to merge queries. I want to merge that one with the account here. So what I could do here is that I could combine these two, so I could find the current version of that record, as well as all of the temporal historic versions. And then I could start to filter and remove the columns that I want to have the old version of and keep the ones that I have the new version of. That's pretty cool. Now I have a lot of columns over here. This isn't really useful in my case because the new account isn't in the temporal table yet. So what I can do instead is that I can manage columns and choose the ones I want. So I want the ID and I want the name. Go. And I want to keep the first top row. There we go. So the name of this account is New and Delicious. This account is Nervous Presenter is Nervous. Now we'll see what happens if I try to do this. Oh, I didn't know about this load mode. Oh, actually you can load new or modified rows. So that's even more awesome than I thought. Okay, so yeah. Do not load on this one, and then auto map, there should be name, etc. is mapped. So delete existing data on load. That's what we're going to do now. Do a next here. Refresh manually or refresh automatically. So now you obviously can do this as a continuous effort. So if you can add new or just append modified, then you can have an automatic refresh, which just does this all the time for you. Which means that I could basically set up an eternal loop here with the data export service, because it would automatically update my Azure SQL database, and that update would again trigger Power Apps to load my entities again. And that would be awful for my Azure credits, but also fun to look at. Now I'll try to fill the conversation with needless words until this one is finished. Yep, and it looks like we're finished. So I go back to accounts here now. See the one I had earlier is now gone, and the new and delicious account is back in. Also, if I go to the DES and check the delete log, then in a while, there's going to be 2 accounts in there. So the one that disappeared will be inside the delete log. And then, of course, it will also be in the temporal table. Yeah, so that's my presentation on backup strategies. Of course, there's a lot more you could do with staging tools, and you can write your own C# stuff or JavaScript for that matter. You could automate this using Azure Runbooks or whatever you want. So there's a lot of options here. I think the main thing, except how cool this is, and the main thing I want you to take from this presentation is that even though it's a cloud solution, you should think about what your backup and restore strategies are. It's easy if you just have a Dynamics database and it isn't really business critical and you can afford to be offline for 2 days. But as soon as you start integrating with other things, you should have some failover capabilities using an Azure Service Bus just to ramp up messages so you don't have data loss while you're waiting for your environment to get up. Using Flow is just amazing for this. So you could set up a flow to read from that Azure Service Bus and just pump the data back into your system as soon as it's up. So there are lots of things you could do. And for most customers, you probably should think about what you're going to do if disaster strikes. And yeah, always use managed solutions. Hi, Gus.
That was awesome, Marius. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So, are there any questions? I'm not sure if I have more time. Oh, yeah. So I sped through everything and I've caught up the time I wasted early on. Anyone have any questions about what I presented or related to it? Or
It looks like you've covered things quite nicely. I really appreciate that. And as Kurt says, it's nice to see SQL skills and not going to waste.
yeah, no, they shouldn't. So for any analytics watching this, the whole temporal table, it's just amazing to pull that into Power BI or whatever tool you prefer. There's so much fun to poke around in there, and you can build amazing visualizations using that data.
Just unmuting myself very quickly. Because we're starting to get a lot more integration with basically our new cloud ERP instances, now we're going to have a lot more dangerous, I'll call it, dangerous financial data going and being shared into Dynamics CE. So I think this is going to be a real priority because the transactional changes in those things can be very fast. So rather than a day, you may even have to do, by the hour.
Yeah.
And so that would be something very cool to be able to do, because you have to have audits. You have a lot of money being involved, a lot of responsibility, or maybe patient records and patient statuses. You have to have audits to see what happened.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. As you can see, the delete record is back in here now. So actually, what you could do just to be really lazy is that you could set up a CDS integration from finance operations just to push data to Dynamics, and then you could use the data export service just to get it into another table and use temporal tables, and suddenly you've got temporal history from your back-end system, which you can pull into Power BI.
So I see our wheels are rolling already.
Yeah. So, I got a full screen of view of you. Yep. Anyone else have any questions or?
Nope, it looks like we're good. Thank you so much for presenting with our group one more time. We'd love to have you back.
Yeah, I hope it was better this time. I tried to cut down on the sarcasm and just underline that.
Americans love sarcasm. It's okay.
Yeah, it just doesn't come through when I'm speaking.
So I really appreciate that so much. Enjoy the rest of your evening for
Thank
you
you.
over there in Europe. Enjoy the rest of your day here in the States. And thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Bye.